Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 596 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We will be breaking down everything that happened over the last week across AEW and NXT, but not only that, this is your AEW Double or Nothing Ultimate Preview Edition. So stay tuned for that later in today's show. As always, we have a ton to discuss here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, so let's not waste a moment. Allow me to remind you that this show
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you get to vote in our pre- and post-show polls surrounding premium live events like WWE King and Queen of the Ring this Saturday, and pay-per-views like AEW Double or Nothing this Sunday. Let your voice be heard. Your pre- and post-show grades will be factored into our instant analysis podcast coming late Saturday afternoon and, of course, Sunday evening. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Over head. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to Raw, NXT, Dynamite, and SmackDown every week, along with exclusive news posts on Friday. I always forget to mention this. Buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. You also get direct access to the Silver King and Vintage for any questions, comments, conversation topics, whatever the hell you want. You can do it on buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. I hope you sign up and become an official Getting Over head. Now, we have, as already mentioned, a loaded show for you today. NXT is building toward NXT Battleground, which I believe is just over 2 weeks away. And of course, for AEW, Dynamite at least was the go-home show for AEW Double or Nothing. There is still Rampage and Collision to come, and we will factor in some of that analysis along with your AEW Double or Nothing instant analysis. So I didn't do this on Tuesday's show. Allow me to just give you a quick schedule for the next week or so. Saturday afternoon, as soon as WWE King and Queen of the Ring go off the air, we will have your, yes, WWE King and Queen of the Ring instant analysis. If you missed our ultimate preview for that, it is already in the podcast feed. Make sure you go back and listen to it. Sunday night, as soon as AEW Double or Nothing goes off the air, we will have, yes, your AEW Double or Nothing instant analysis. Then we'll be back on Tuesday with your WWE show, and next Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel, talking AEW and NXT. So we have a ton to discuss. We're going to kick off with NXT. We're going to move to AEW. And then at the end of the show, we're going to give you the AEW Double or Nothing Ultimate Preview. There will be 3 timestamps in the episode description. So if you happen to be listening pretty close to Sunday and you just want to hear the Ultimate Preview for the pay-per-view, you can jump to that. As always, I hope you listen to the entire show. So for NXT, before we even get into the show itself, a couple news items right off the top. WWE is putting tickets for NXT Battleground in the UFC Apex on sale this Friday. And the reason I note this, because I don't promote ticket on sales for WWE, AEW, or anywhere else, but the reason this is notable is these tickets are going on sale 17 days before the show. So it doesn't make any sense to me. Other than the potential cost savings of running Battleground at a TKO-owned venue, I still cannot understand why this decision was made, nor do I understand the way WWE handled it. It remains nonsensical to take NXT talent out of one performance center to fly them across the country to another performance center. What they need is not only the experience of large arena crowds, but also the volume of fans for visual appeal of the premium live event. That's what they had running in Georgia. That's what they certainly had WrestleMania weekend in Philadelphia. That's what they've had previously for NXT Premium Live events. The UFC Apex is like cavernous, empty, soulless. I don't know why you would run a show there. Look, come June, maybe when we tune in and we look at it, we say, wow, they completely fooled us. They figured it out and they put on a great show and visually it was great and it sounded awesome. But going into it, it is not a good look as far as I'm concerned. And I can only justify it as a cost-cutting measure. And for me, that's not a good enough reason to pull out of an arena and go to UFC Apex. On a more positive note, rapper Sexy Red, yeah, for real, is coming to NXT next week. And she tweeted about it, saying she wants to hit an RKO on someone. Apparently, she's a legit WWE fan. I have zero clue what to expect here, but this does have a chance to be like the best NXT celebrity appearance, probably since the 2.0 switch. So I wanted to get that out of the way. Let's go ahead and break down the last week in NXT. Roxanne Perez got a video promo saying the women's title has always been her why. She's simply better than everyone else, so it's her and the title against the world. Perez said all she sees when she looks in the mirror is the prodigy, not a hero or a villain. Ava backstage confirmed during a phone call that Roxanne would learn her forthcoming challenger next week. She already spoke with Nick Aldis, and she said the title would be defended at Battleground. So if she's speaking with Aldis, clearly the indication is this is going to be someone from the SmackDown women's roster. And the only names, I looked at the roster, the only names that make sense would be Tegan Nox, Indy Hartwell, and Candice LeRae. Now, if you remember, Indy just recently got an opportunity to, I think, it was either a qualifying match for something or she got to contend for the title. I forget exactly, but she was in NXT and had a match. Candice coming back would certainly make sense. But Tegan is the only one not doing anything right now. And I think fans would pop huge for her to be back in NXT. So that's my prediction right here. Roxanne Perez, Tegan Nox, NXT Battleground. Wes Lee, Josh Briggs, and Joe Coffey fought in a North American Championship #1 contendership match. After the attack on Ivar last week, he, by the way, is legitimately injured, as we explained to you last Friday on buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Coffey replaced Ivar in this match. Gallus bragged about taking out all three guys last week with Coffey threatening Obafemi. It was fine, but probably their best promo since moving to the United States, just not really saying anything about Gallus. Oba joined commentary. West used a swanton bomb to break a fall before hitting a flip-over inverted DDT combined with a Briggs regular DDT. Briggs caught West flying for a buckle bomb chokeslam. Then he hit a normal chokeslam on Coffey, and then did a chokeslam from hell on West into Coffey. I thought it was real interesting to see 3 different chokeslam variations in succession, and I kind of think that's something he should adopt. Gallus took Briggs out with a high-low ringside, and West avoided all the best for the bells, but ate a headbutt. Both men fell on top of Briggs for a simultaneous 1-2-3, with Wes and Coffey emerging as co-winners of the match. And later backstage, Ava informed Femi he would be defending the title in a triple threat against both of them, and he just seemed to accept it because why not? Now, it's been a while since we've seen a double pin. It could have been executed a little bit better, and I didn't love that Briggs is seemingly in the middle of being elevated, but just took a double fall after he's already lost all these other matches. I'm not sure I love going right back to another triple threat when they could have just done Wes and Coffey next week for a single challenger to emerge. Good work with the guys, nice contrast in styles, some fun sequences, just maybe not my favorite booking. Trick Williams hit the ring addressing Noam Dar, clarifying that he did not attack him because if he did, he'd have been unconscious with a Jordan logo on his forehead. Jakara Jackson and Metaphor Sandsdar interrupted, claiming otherwise with Lash Legend getting Trick's back, but the others did not want to hear it. That brought out Joe Coffey, saying Trick may be wondering why he's out there, given he just earned a North American title opportunity. Gallus attacked from behind before Javon Evans saved the 3-on-1 beatdown, made it a 3-on-2 beatdown. Trick ate the Gallus finisher. So, yeah, Joe, I'd like some answers as to why this makes sense as well. And I'd also like to know where the hell Wes Lee was at. Like, Coffey was fine after his match to get involved here, but Wes was nowhere to be found to help these other guys. That was a bit odd. Trick as champion, it just hasn't been working, but it's not his fault because he's in a go-nowhere feud of some kind with Dar, and now he has issues with Gallus, which is like watching paint dry. I'm not sure there could be a less interesting pair of feuds for Trick coming out of his career-defining moment, at least so far in his career. Like, what exactly are we doing here? Now, hopefully it makes sense next week and beyond. If Joe Coffey, of all people, has 2 title matches at Battleground, I don't even know how you could possibly justify that. Obviously, Trick did not attack Noam because that made no sense, so we know he's faking it. But how does that reveal wind up mattering and not being eye-rolling like Lash Legends' reveal was with just a picture? We're going to have to see. But there was way too much Gallus on NXT, and we're getting way too much Gallus in general right now. And we're also not getting anywhere near enough Trick Williams and Roxanne Perez. So NXT's got to figure out what they're doing here. Thea Hale fought Fallon Henley in a North American Championship qualifier match, obviously for the women's title. This opened the show with Thea shot out of a cannon. Fallon tried to introduce a chair, but Ridge Holland took it from her. That led the referee to see him and eject the entirety of Chase U. For some reason before this, the ref stopped Thea from exiting the ring like 5 different times for no reason whatsoever. Hale countered something into a Kimura lock, but Henley rolled outside and rammed her into the barricade. Fallon then caught an enraged Thea running back into the ring with a Shining Wizard for the win. She just realized, by the way, Fallon's been on TV for like 2.5 years. Her finisher still does not have a name. How is that even possible? Jasmine Nix attacked Hale after the bell in this real interesting gray jersey bodysuit. She hit a really flashy Pele kick and one of the smoothest kip-ups I can recall. And that's how the segment ended. Fallon was the right winner, obviously. She should be firmly in the main event scene at this juncture, but at a minimum, she should be a legitimate contender to actually become the first women's North American champion. This was a good time all around, I would say, especially given Henley won clean and the Chase U ejection did not excuse a loss other than Hale kind of wrestling without her support system. It was an enjoyable open to the show. I'm just not loving Fallon as a heel. She would have been the perfect babyface challenger to go against this iteration of Roxanne. You could have made her a tweener if you wanted to give her some edge, but going full heel, it's just not really working. In just a few seconds here, though, I'll also mention Nix flashed big time. She's got some oomph behind her, and I'm kind of curious to see where she goes from here. Later backstage, Riley Osborne again called Holland a liability. He shot back that he acted because he needed to. They got into a whole heated argument. Andre Chase broke it up, and he demanded they settle it in the ring, presumably next week. Then he shut down Duke Hudson from contributing. Nix later confronted Henley backstage and actually complimented her, saying her belief is why she waited until after the match to attack Hale. Her belief in Fallon being able to win on her own is the reason that she waited. So I found that pretty interesting. Them teaming up, I don't know if that makes sense because Nix was working with JC. Maybe they do work together. Then when JC comes back, they kind of screw over Fallon, and that's how she turns back babyface. A lot of options here. Brenly Reese fought Jada Parker in the other Women's North American Championship qualifier. Idris Enofe backstage told Malik Blade that he's cooked and clearly suffering from bad luck, so they initially decided not to join Reese ringside, even though Parker came out without the mud. Jada hit her springing cake tawn, is what I'm going to call it now. Reese came back with a cartwheel clothesline, also better than Charlotte Flair's. Enofe and Blade came out at this point, with Parker immediately reversing the momentum and winning with her hip check. Zero question, obviously, that Jada was the right winner. At this point, I'm ready for her to expand her moveset more because she's close to mastering what she already does. This hip check, it works perfectly well as a signature, but it should absolutely not be her finisher when she's capable of something far more athletic and eye-catching. The hip check should pretty much stun the opponent, and then something else finishes them off. She's obviously got cake and all. Using it makes sense, but she's way more than that, and reducing her just to doing that, for me, doesn't really work. This was also Brinley's best showing since she started getting TV time, so that was a huge positive for her. The tag team championships were on the line. Nathan Frazier and Axiom defending against Stax and Luca Crucifino. The faces congratulated Tony D'Angelo on winning the Heritage Cup backstage. They got into a gimmick making fun of how uncreative the name A-Kid was on the trophy. D'Angelo family did. It's always a good time how Axiom acts like it's a completely different person and just disassociates A-Kid from himself. Anyway, they got into some good-natured banter, and a title challenge was made and eventually accepted. Frazier did a sick triple rope run kick and a springboard inverted DDT. Axiom got the hot tag and hit Stax with a half-and-half suplex. Seemed to land on his neck, Stax, but he was okay. They teamed for a super kick brainbuster. Axiom took a code breaker and an inverted zigzag. Frazier ate a cool lifted double backdrop. Crucifino really flashed here. Didn't know he had this kind of skill. No quarter catch crew attacked D'Angelo out of the crowd in the finish as Frazier caught Stax with an inside cradle for the title retention before the two other groups brawled. Then the Good Brothers attacked the champions with Magic Killer on Frazier to end it all. Disappointing that the initial attack lessened the finish because this was running way hotter than I expected. Also, there's no reason for Stacks and Crucifino being in this match and needing to get protected. That just doesn't really fit. They're a legitimate team that could actually compete in this division for some time. Loved seeing them together. Way better than Stacks and Tony D. Luca was a necessary add to D'Angelo family. He's made the faction feel whole. The OC attack on the champions, that was expected. It's been teased for multiple weeks. I always expected Frazier and Axiom to be transitional champions anyway, so that's not a huge surprise. And if they do the match at Battleground, I'll be even less surprised if the titles do change hands. Natalia and Carmen Petrovic fought Shayna Baszler and Lola Vice. Carmen put over Natty and said she was nervous for her first main event. Natty expressed confidence in her. The heels expressed confidence in each other, given they've both won singles matches against this duo. But after Baszler cautioned no dancing and to take everything seriously, Vice protested that she can basically do both. Commentary put Natty over huge on her hot tag before she locked in a sharpshooter on Lola that was broken by Shayna. Carmen then escaped Karafuda clutch, throwing Baszler outside, and combined after a Natty gut punch for heart attack, clothesline style, to get the clean win 1-2-3 over Lola. Baszler was frustrated after the bell, lifting Vice up, only to take a roundhouse kick to the head before Vice shook her ass basically over her dead body. But as Lola continued to dance, Shayna grabbed her over the ropes with Karafuda clutch and choked her out in the middle of the ring before referees separated them. Then they caught up and brawled with Ava announcing a match. Shayna immediately grabbed the mic and demanded it be NXT Underground. This was so close to perfect. Literally the only mistake was going back to NXT Underground when they just did that less than a month ago. We just discussed last week how they could have used Underground for this match, this tag team match, but even doing that would have been too soon. So now they're going to use it for Baszler and Vice. They're literally going to the UFC Apex. The NXT Fight Pit concept is right there. It's blatantly obvious. Now, if there's a technical issue in that venue, that's a missed opportunity. You cannot tell me, though, if you don't want to do Fight Pit, that they can't use an octagon somewhere or the pieces of an octagon to create something else. I don't know. I'm just frustrated that they're doing Underground when you have two people who have fought in a cage and you're going to a venue that does cage fighting. But I will say, this was the fourth straight quality match involving this feud and a real appropriate way to end it with the baby faces going over and the heels breaking up and fighting each other. Two other things. I laughed to myself at how this may have looked on paper, like when they got the sheets on what they're going to do. Shayna, Lola is going to hit you to knock you out, shake her ass over you, and then you're going to choke her out. Like Baszler's response to that had to be something like,
I prayed for this and it happened.
So that was just personally entertaining for me. And then I've said this before, but Natty has been revitalized over the last couple of months. She's doing some of her best work in years. There's a report her contract is expiring soon, and I know she's 41, but she's legitimately better and more interesting than she has been in a long ass time. So I hope she sticks around. I especially love what she's doing in NXT. And you know what? I would even buy her as champion at some point. Despite my criticism in terms of them doing NXT Underground rather than doing a cage match, that will ultimately be a
banger
at NXT. I almost called it Underground Battleground. And it's been really smart the way WWE took two legitimate, experienced main roster talents in Shayna and Natty and used them to develop two somewhat similar related NXT talents. Carmen is suddenly someone that you can actually believe in. And working with Shayna has done more for Lola than her winning the NXT breakout contract accomplished on its own. Robert Stone backstage was chatting up Layla Diggs, perhaps recruiting her, when Lexis King interrupted, saying he's stuck in a hole, and even Chelsea Green wouldn't link up with him again, him, of course, being Stone. King suggested Stone hitch his wagon to him when Ava walked in calling Lexis annoying and scheduling him a match. Stone was ready to fight. Ava said she'd surprise with the perfect opponent, given Stone got his ass handed to him the last time he fought. That's true, obviously. Stone actually had a really cool social media video, I should note, before NXT, where he talked about starting fresh. I thought him rejoining Chelsea and linking with Piper Niven made a ton of sense. So I'm pretty damn disappointed that was not put into play, and he's still in NXT. He's main roster ready. He's been main roster ready probably for 3 years. King at the ring, talking shit, when suddenly Dante Chen made his return, getting a huge And when I say huge, like shockingly huge ovation from the crowd, I guess because he's a local NXT favorite, longtime guy that's been there, kind of like Kona Reeves back in the day, maybe. His last NXT TV match was against King during Halloween Havoc, but he's been around and on Level Up. So I was confused as a regular viewer, like why this was a big deal. Stone was ringside with him. Chen actually dominated early until King hit a running knee to the back of the head. Stone then distracted with Lexus dropping the coronation. When he tried again, Chen caught him with a small package and got the upset victory. Fun overall segment. Nice reaction from the crowd. Just again, not that sure why it was such a big deal on TV. And then later backstage after the match, Ava clapped for Chen and gave credit to Stone for suggesting him in that spot. That did not track with what I just explained happened earlier, where Ava said she was going to book the match and she had someone in mind. Now she's giving Stone credit. She said he didn't have a part of that. So again, it didn't line up. Ava then gave Stone some props for that. So what are they doing here? Like, is the progression for Robert Stone that he's managing Dante Chen and possibly Layla Diggs, who's as of now at least irrelevant. She hasn't even been on TV, instead of Chelsea and Piper. I don't understand what they're doing. I'm not angry about it yet, but like I'm very confused at what this was and why they think this might be a good idea. And lastly, for NXT, the black screen alarm clock this time led to a video of a person waking up. We saw Wendy Chu in her PJs getting out of bed, yawning, and putting on some cow slippers. We didn't see her face. We obviously knew who it was. And you guys know I'm a Wendy Chu mark, so excited to get her back on NXT. So clearly this week, I don't want to call it a mixed bag because NXT was largely very good. And we also, I've told you here and there, we will or will not talk about ratings when it matters or when it's relevant. And after a low week last week, which we didn't address because we didn't talk about AEW ratings either, NXT was back to where it's pretty much been through April. I would say it matched or was near one of their highest ratings pretty much all the way until the beginning of January. The first 3 weeks of January were the highest ratings of the year. And then since then, they've pretty much for a high been around 650, 660, something like that, 0.17, 0.20 when it comes to the demo. And they were back to that after a rough week last week, which I believe was because of the Knicks game, but regardless. So solid rating for NXT. It's doing exactly what it needs to do, and it continues to be an entertaining show. So with that, let's go ahead and move over to AEW. As I mentioned, we are going to talk about a lot of things that happened primarily on Collision and Rampage that don't need to be part of the AEW Double or Nothing Ultimate Preview. And then, of course, we will do the Ultimate Preview on the back end with some of those specifics, primarily from Dynamite. As mentioned earlier, there are timestamps in the episode description. So if you are here right before Double or Nothing and you just want to hear the preview for the pay-per-view, you can go ahead and jump to that. But there is a lot of context provided from what happened on AEW TV from Collision and Rampage. I shouldn't say a lot. There is some context, and we will get to that right now. Of course, first, our general evaluation of the AEW matches from the week. Out of 18 matches this week, 5 or ones, I would say, had legitimate build, sensible storyline relevance. It's 28%. And this was a go-home week for a pay-per-view. Collision and Rampage, I know it's somewhat broken record from me. I thought they were kind of dreadful shows, not just in this regard, but in totality. And you'll understand why as we break it down right now. But before we get to the breakdown of the matches and everything that happened on those shows, and obviously the AEW Double or Nothing Ultimate Preview coming up, there is a little bit of news. Jim Ross on Thursday morning announced he had to take an unexpected emergency room trip due to shortness of breath. Obviously, that's always concerning. No update as we tape this show. So obviously sending our best wishes to JR. Hope he's okay. The fact that he was able to tweet about it makes me think, nothing emergency about it. I mean, obviously you go to the emergency room either way, but the fact that he was able to tweet and was there under doctor's care, one would hope that he will come out of that okay. And hopefully be obviously at Double or Nothing this coming Sunday in Las Vegas. So with that said, let's go ahead, break down everything that happened across Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage. A lot of it right now. Some of it we will save for the Ultimate Preview. On Collision, Nick Wayne beat Jack Cartwheel in 2 minutes. Christian Cage backstage told Nick he had their support. Of course he does. They're a faction. Wayne said he was a boy when Swerve Strickland attacked him last year, but now he's a man and he wants to do this on his own. The guy's moveset, Jack, is literally just cartwheels. I mean, I should have expected that by the name, but more so than I expected. It was like when Tony Khan put that pizza guy on TV, except this dude was actually in a match on AEW's number 2 show. Nick hit Wayne's World, then did Swerve's house call. And I'm like, how did this help Wayne? Why did it happen? What did it accomplish? There's an entire roster of talent. This dude, Wayne, has 4 singles matches in 9 months. And one of them is against Jack Cartwheel. On Collision, Bryan Danielson and FTR fought Lance Archer and The Righteous. Random match. This was excused by saying the Elite booked it to hurt the faces, to put competition against them. And Danielson and FTR, of course, made a huge point again to say how much they love AEW. We fucking get it. This was even for about 10 minutes, with tagging becoming irrelevant as the faces went on a run in the finish. Dax Harwood flipped Cash Wheeler over his shoulder, and then they hit Shatter Machine for the win. The heels attacked after the bell, crossing from Collision into Rampage, which we are now conditioned to expect when these shows go back to back. After an extremely extended beatdown with chairs, Daniel Garcia saved, with Tony Schiavone screaming that Garcia is standing up for AEW against The Righteous. On Rampage, Danielson said the Elite put a price on their heads, which worked because FTR will not be cleared for Dynamite. He criticized the Elite for not showing up on Saturdays, saying he's still okay and they can take another shot at him Wednesday. Then later in the show, Sanjay Dutt announced that the Elite scheduled Danielson against Satnam Singh. The Young Bucks could put Bryan against any killer on the roster, and instead they booked him against a guy who is big but doesn't really wrestle. So let me get this straight. The Bucks are doing a hostile takeover of AEW, where after shutting Tony Khan's satellite feed off for 1 week, suddenly they're in control of everything. Khan still can't travel to shows, despite twisting his neck as much as he wanted while wearing the brace all those weeks during the NFL draft. And he has no financial means, a billionaire, to otherwise get control back of his company. So the Bucks are running things, except Tony and Kenny Omega can both book matches. And the Bucks are comfortable enough with this half-ass takeover that they don't even show up to one of 2 TV tapings put on each week. And then you have Bryan and FTR criticize them for that, like they're talent, when they're not. They're EVPs trying to take over the company. Why hasn't Khan used their absence to completely run Collision? And if he's doing that, why couldn't he put them in matches where they would have to fight big people and strong people who can hurt them? And he can even do that by a proxy if he can't travel. None of this to me makes a shred of sense. It is a horrendous, painful storyline with constant new plot holes. And we'll continue talking about this a little bit later in the Ultimate Preview. On Collision, Serena Deeb beat Anna Jay in 8 minutes. Deeb escaped a gory special, hit a double underhook front slam, plus a Serenity Lock for the submission. I used to think Anna had something like they could build upon. They've just straight up wasted her. Lutha came down and stole one of Deeb's flags after the bell. Mariah May went out on stage to hold it, with Toni Storm entering and getting naked behind it before being wrapped in it. Why? Because. Then Deeb chased them away. Like, this is the women's feud for the major title. This is what's happening. On Dynamite, Storm and May fought Saraya and Harley Cameron. This was Saraya. Her first match in nearly 4 months, despite being healthy, as far as I know. And also just her third match in 2024. I was going to call them heels, but all 4 of them are heels. Saraya and Harley did a stereo sunset flip powerbomb deal. Then Storm and May kissed their opponents before hitting Storm Zero and Mayday, with Storm adding Storm Zero on Cameron for the win. Deeb attacked as they were all teasing after the bell and hit Toni in the head with the spike of her heel. Then she did the Serenity Lock while sitting on a chair, which didn't exactly provide additional leverage. This ended up being one of the better segments on Dynamite, but it certainly wasn't anything that notable. On Collision, Will Ospreay fought Shane Taylor. Roderick Strong was on commentary. Ospreay probably hit the most fluid and quick handspring kick I've ever seen. Credit to Taylor for getting over in a Spanish Fly. Ospreay took Taylor off the ropes with a really impressive Stormbreaker, especially given the dude's size, and Will got the victory in 10 minutes. Kingdom and Storm attacked after the bell, but Ospreay easily escaped with the tope. I was bothered last week that Ospreay and Lee Moriarty was so hotly contested. It was just ridiculous. But Taylor, bringing the size advantage, made this one a lot more realistic by comparison. On Collision, Orange Cassidy beat Isaiah Cassidy in 12 minutes. I didn't even put the Cassidy and Cassidy together until right now. Don Callis watched from backstage. Trent Beretta watched from the crowd. All this work, and it ended suddenly after beach break. Callis smiled. Trent said on a live mic he's a better professional wrestler than Cassidy, and he only lost because Orange cheated. So he challenged him for Double or Nothing in a straight up match. Orange attacked him for 5 seconds, and that was it. I don't even really have an opinion on it. On Dynamite, Ospreay and Orange fought Strong and Trent. This was literally two feuds getting merged together, but there was really no interaction or anything leading to the match, like an attack save or something like that. Callis was on commentary and grabbed Cassidy's boot to prevent Strong from hitting a finisher on him. Kingdom and Wardlow interfered, with the referee somehow not seeing any of it, despite Ospreay being laid out on the ramp with Wardlow standing over him. Orange ate End of Heartache, with the heels getting the victory. Then they attacked 5-on-2, with Strong driving his title into Ospreay, who bladed. Then Orange got knocked out through a triangle choke submission on the ramp. This was a waste of a nasty blade job for 30 seconds of blood. It was also nonsensical from the standpoint that Callis is there, yet had neither of his guys ready to help Ospreay. No Kyle Fletcher, no Konosuke Takeshita. These guys are in the family. Orange seems like he's trying to recruit him. At least he's pretending to try to recruit him. No one to help Orange either. The match was fun. It had some good action, but we can say that about most things in AEW. On Rampage, Kyle O'Reilly beat Lee Moriarty in 10 minutes via submission. Maybe the best match of the 3-hour block Saturday. O'Reilly went through a war against a guy who hasn't won a singles match on AEW television since September 2022. I'm no shitting you. 21 months. And that was over Fuego del Sol, by the way. We had an FTW Contender Series on Collision. These matches were one after another. First, Chris Jericho cut a promo from after Dynamite saying Hook going after him with the microphone makes him proud because it tells him that Hook is learning from the learning tree and that it absolutely matters to him. Then the 3 matches. Hook avoided Starship Pain and beat Johnny TV in under 4 minutes with Red Rum. Katsuyori Shibata beat Rocky Romero in 10 minutes with a figure 4 leg lock immediately after, with Hook and Shibata dapping up on the ramp in the transition. Why is Romero getting so many matches and title opportunities, even if it's FTW? It's getting ridiculous. Then immediately after this, Brian Keith beat Boulder in 103 seconds. This was not even worth being an AEW dark match. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Then on Dynamite, Hook, Shibata, and Keith had a triple threat number 1 contendership. Jericho and Big Bill were on commentary. The crowd was mostly dead for this. Shibata had Keith in a heel hook as Hook put him in Red Rum, leading to a double submission victory. Fans chanted, "Let them fight." Jericho grabbed the mic and did his shtick. His commentary told us, contexted them to make it official. Exactly what I was talking about earlier with Tony's role making no sense. He can make matches here, but he isn't in control of his show. This was extremely rough from start to finish, and it was unfortunate. It's not AEW's fault, but it was unfortunate that one night earlier, NXT did a double pinfall, and they ended up doing a double submission. I mean, you can't plan that, obviously. It sucks, but that's exactly what happened. On Collision, Pac in an interview said Bang Bang Gang would normally ruffle his feathers, but he has no emotion towards them and could not care less. Then he dared them to make him feel something and make him care. Why does he want them to make him care if he doesn't care? Also, they're trios champions. Is that not enough of a reason to want to go after them? So then after this, Bang Bang Gang did their entrance with Pac at their feet, with us being led to believe he was beaten with a bat. Jay White then said, "I bet you care now." The visual was really cool, but it was totally nonsensical that he'd go from an interview to totally beaten down with a whole entrance setup for an unscheduled segment in just a couple of minutes. On Dynamite, the gang hit the ring with White cutting a promo on Pac, wondering whether it was Pac or Pac, which I legit do not know the answer to. I go through the same thing every single time I see his name, say his name, and try to talk about it on the show. So I don't know. I'm saying Pac right now. I don't know if that's correct, but I found this particularly funny because I go through this every single time. But it was so silent during this segment that you could literally hear the crowd try to give advice. And then at one point, someone at a normal volume, they didn't scream, it wasn't a chant. You could hear blatantly through the mic, someone yell, "Who wrote this shit?" Pac then showed up on the big screen saying 3-on-1 is unfair, as he obviously brought back Death Triangle. Shivani told us it was a great moment in AEW history. They briefly brawled as Pac made the obvious trios challenge 4 days before the show. Later, the champions accepted, but it was clearly not advertised as a title match. I didn't so much mind that it was telegraphed. I minded that it was weak from start of the build all the way to the finish. And it also doesn't make sense that Death Triangle would be back, challenge for a match on pay-per-view, and not blatantly want it to be for the titles. And regarding the fan and why he was able to be heard and why fans throughout the entire episode were able to be heard, They sold 2,300 tickets for a go-home Dynamite ahead of Double or Nothing, which is like one of their signature, let's say top 2 pay-per-views of the year. That is extremely rough. And if you saw a lot of the camera shots, you saw entire decks that were empty and really big sections that were empty. And this is the consequence of that. They got to start booking smaller venues where they can pack it in and have boisterous, loud crowds. You don't deal with stuff like this. On Rampage, Deonna Purrazzo beat Robin Renegade in 7 minutes via submission. She kept it locked in after the bell, leading Thunder Rosa running down to make the save. Yet Thunder, despite making the save, was dumb enough to turn her back, allowing Deonna to shove her once and then run away. Except she didn't actually run away, so Rosa easily caught up with her, threw her into the LED ring apron, so Purrazzo ran through the crowd. This was captivating stuff. On Rampage, Brian Cage beat Anthony Bowens in 12 minutes. This was the main event. I'll repeat that. Brian Cage beat Anthony Bowens in a 12-minute main event for a match that just happened because. Cage hit a low blow and won with the drill claw. At least he got a victory of some kind. That was pretty cool. It was explained that Acclaimed took the first match they could possibly get because they, guess what, love AEW, and Cage aligned with the Elite, so they wanted to teach him a lesson. Everyone loves AEW, folks, except, half the roster that was also hired and paid by Tony, but is willing to work against him here. On Rampage, Roosh beat a jobber in 40 seconds, and then he choked him out with some wires. He yelled into the camera that nothing happens unless he says so. I can't put 2 and 2 together. What is happening that he isn't saying so? That didn't really make sense. And then on Rampage, Scorpio Sky in a video package said he's easily accomplished a lot in his career, and given his place high in the sky, he's going to reach down and lift people up with him. I really like the tone of this, but it does seem to be a gimmick immensely similar to Chris Jericho's learning tree. Before we get to the AEW Double or Nothing Ultimate Preview, a quick look at ratings just for AEW Dynamite. Not going to worry about Collision or Rampage, but it was notable last week that Dynamite actually dipped to a significant degree, went 672,000 viewers, 0.23 demo, which, look, let's just be honest. Those are, NXT numbers. NXT did 654 and 0.17 this week. So just by comparison, immensely similar. And let's not forget, earlier this year, 3 weeks in a row, first 3 weeks, NXT did in the 7s and 0.2 or even higher than that. So that was an immensely bad number for Dynamite last week. This week, they got back up above that 700 threshold for whatever purpose that matters. 713,000, 0.24 up from 0.23. Still not necessarily a great rating for a go-home show. But that said, it did go up against Eastern Conference Final Game 1 for the NHL and Western Conference Final, I want to say Game 2 for the NBA. So that's some pretty steep competition. So I wouldn't necessarily look into those two ratings as a hugely negative trend. What will be a bigger concern is once the playoffs end, if AEW does not bounce back into the high 7s again, at a minimum, if not back into the 8s. If they can get back there, great. And that's going to be really good for their TV deal. But if their ratings stay on the decline and they still have not come to terms, whether it's Warner Brothers Discovery, whether it's with another party, that's when you get into some trouble. So with that, let's get to our AEW Double or Nothing Ultimate Preview. And as AEW is wont to do, there very well may be matches added between the conclusion of this podcast and the conclusion of Collision. Lots of C's there, alliteration, folks, on Saturday. But let's go with what we know as of now. Orange Cassidy against Trent Beretta. As far as I'm concerned, this is not a pay-per-view match without a really exciting stipulation of some kind. This is a TV match that it seems to me is being used to fluff out the card. Orange already beat Trent, and the question is, what benefit would he get from beating him again? You have the Callis interaction with Orange, which doesn't really make any sense because why would Cassidy decide to start working with a guy who has purely been a heel throughout his entire AEW run? Then you have Trent, who's kind of been talking shit and really confident, and you wonder why is he so confident? So I just have a strange feeling that Callis gets involved or someone from the Don Callis family gets involved and helps Trent beat Orange one way or another. We get an upset, quote unquote, heel victory, Trent over Orange. The FTW Championship is going to be on the line. Chris Jericho against Hook and Katsuyori Shibata in a triple threat match. And obviously, Jericho has been feuding with Hook, not really Shibata. Samoa Joe, a couple of weeks ago, played Hook and Shibata like working against each other as something that didn't make sense, almost suggesting that they become a tag team. You have Jericho, of course, with Big Bill under the learning tree. They theoretically could be a tag team. So this is a situation where it really doesn't make sense to have taken the title off of Hook to put it on Jericho, just to put it right back on Hook. I have Jericho retaining the title here. I do think Hook and Shibata end up teaming up. Maybe the feud continues, them two against Jericho and Big Bill, and then maybe Hook gets another title match at some point down the line. We are clearly in the Jericho vortex. They can try to own it. Jericho can try to own it himself and make comedy of it. And I've largely been okay with it, and I've been more supportive of the learning tree gimmick than I think a lot of people listening and maybe a lot of people watching. But the last couple of weeks, it's been rough. I liked it a little bit more at the beginning when it was less defined, and now that it's getting defined, I don't necessarily know that I love it. But Jericho retains over Hook the FTW Championship. We also have Bang Bang Gang against Death Triangle in what, as of right now, is a non-title match, but very well might be, because on Dynamite they teased the fact that it wasn't a title match yet, even though it was booked by Tony Khan, who makes the decisions on such things. So this is either a non-title match, which is nonsensical from the standpoint of Death Triangle being former champions and clearly wanting the titles, or it's a title match, in which case, am I supposed to believe that a group reuniting 4 days before the pay-per-view is going to win the championships, especially when Pentagon and Rey Fenix basically lose everything? Now, on pure talent alone, if we were, breaking this down in reality, and if the titles wound up on the line, Death Triangle should win them going away. They're far more talented as a trio. I'm wondering if this might mark the return of Juice Robinson to help the heels to the victory. But it's tough to make a prediction on the match, not knowing whether it's going to have the title on the line or not. If the championships are up for grabs, Bang Bang Gang. If it's a non-title match, then it should probably be described as an eliminator, just based on AEW rules, which it's not. But I would go with Death Triangle because you can easily pin one of the Guns and then run this back for the titles. Either way, the entrances are going to be great because they actually have two of the best entrances, period, in all of AEW, Bang Bang Gang and Death Triangle. The IWGP World Heavyweight Championship Eliminator match will take place. Jon Moxley against Konosuke Takeshita. On Collision, Mox cut a promo with Claudio Castagnoli behind him, saying it's in their nature to fight and they don't seek adulation but blood. Claudio then said that he hates promos and likes to fight because words mean nothing. We know you hate promos, Claudio, trust me. The tone on this was pretty cool, but they didn't say anything that mattered. On Dynamite, there was a 60-second video package that similarly accomplished nothing. Takeshita then squashed Matt Sydal and attacked after the bell until Mox calmly entered the ring, hit him with the microphone, and said, "See you at Double or Nothing," also accomplishing nothing. At least Takeshita squashed Sydal, which is what Ospreay should have done with Moriarty 2 weeks ago. We have the Women's Championship, Toni Storm defending against Serena Deeb. Nothing extra to talk about. We already kind of discussed, I guess, what the go-home build is for this. If anyone is beating Storm for the title, we've had this discussion previously, like Mariah May makes a lot of sense, or returning Jamie Hayter, or returning Britt Baker. There's a lot of women who can take this title. Serena Deeb ain't one of them. It would not make sense. It would not be a good decision. Storm is way too over, way too hot right now. And really, this match is probably happening on this card because, let's just be candid, it is not the main women's match being promoted. That is the TBS title, the secondary title, which is part of the triple main event for Double or Nothing. We will discuss that in a bit. So official prediction, Storm retaining the title. I do wish I had more for you on this match. I just don't. TNT Championship, Adam Copeland defending against Malachi Black in a barbed wire steel cage match. If Black wins, Copeland has to join the House of Black. That's a stipulation. On Dynamite, we had O'Reilly against Black. Major NXT Black and Gold vibes here. The match was nothing special, even though commentary told us what a freaking match we just saw. But I absolutely loved the finish. Black did a feint that stopped O'Reilly cold offensively, and then he just nailed him with the end for the victory. I thought that was so sick. After the bell, the lights flickered red with Malachi in the ring before AEW basically did WWE Brood Edge with blood falling from the ceiling and Copeland laughing on the big screen. The inability for AEW to do anything just creative or different in a situation like this was such an eye roll. You have Black, who's this spooky guy, doesn't get fazed by anything. He has it up on all of his opponents. He even has powers like The Undertaker, where he can suddenly appear in the ring and suddenly leave the ring when the lights go out. But he stands there looking around when he sees a red light, shocked that like this weird thing is happening, doesn't move, just stands there stationary and gets covered in blood. And I got to tell you, the camera shot of this was also kind of weird because there's one angle where the blood is falling in a straight line, like behind him. And it looks like it's coming out of his ass. And it just is what the camera angle was. I can't really tell you otherwise because that's the case. I just don't understand. And look, maybe this is Copeland's idea. And it's again, Khan just like giving a thumbs up and okaying it. But how can you allow them to basically just do Brood Edge again when it's been done so many times and it's not unique? And you're, more importantly, in the middle of what I thought was one of the most captivating angles for all of Double or Nothing. I was like, he took his wedding ring. He wants him to join House of Black. Man, that would make so much sense. Instead, it's like, how many times have we seen this exact same thing before? I thought there was at least a chance Black would win this because the most interesting development by far would be Copeland joining House of Black, either getting turned heel to a degree or maybe doing a Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton, Wyatt family type of deal and taking it down from the inside. But after this, I mean, it's possible that Black wins. Again, that would be the most interesting move by far. It just feels like Copeland's going to retain the title here, that he got one up on Black mentally, and he's going to use that to get over on him here. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's more creative and more interesting than that. I love this stipulation, barbed wire steel cage. I know it's been done before. It hasn't been done recently in WWE or AEW. I'm into it. This is one of the matches I am anticipating most on this show. I just kind of have a feeling it's going to go the way of Brood Edge and Demon Finn Balor from WrestleMania, and that would be super disappointing. The International Championship will be on the line. Roderick Strong defending against Will Ospreay. Also, nothing additional to really discuss here. And it's very clear to me, at least the way this whole thing has been booked, that Strong is meant to be a transitional champion. They want that title on Will Ospreay. It also seems like Ospreay will not be going for the AEW Championship at all in this year, in which case you want him to have a title going into the show if he's not going to be winning one, the main one on the show in England, in London. So Ospreay over Strong is the pick. Could there be interference? Yes, it's possible that Undisputed Kingdom interferes, Wardlow does something, maybe Adam Cole is actually cleared and he's the one that costs Ospreay and he gets into a feud with Ospreay and then Ospreay eventually challenges Strong again. All that is possible. But if you're looking at this card and you're trying to determine like, are titles going to change hands? And if so, which ones? This seems like the most no-brainer pick. And Ospreay is so hot right now. He's undefeated. He's kicking ass. He really is the most exciting person in the company already. It makes all the sense in the world to strap him up with the International Championship. We have Anarchy in the Arena. FTR, Bryan Danielson, and Darby Allin, Team AEW against the Elite. So you have Team All Wrestling against the Elite in All Elite Wrestling. On Dynamite, the Bucks barred Darby from the building by handing out flyers to 6 security guards. While doing so, they put him over for recovering from a broken ankle and getting hit by a bus, but still somehow being cleared for this match. I would still like to know how that happened. Then they laughed with Dutt about Singh hurting Danielson, even though he doesn't need to beat him. He just needs to hurt him. The Bucks later passed out more flyers until they saw Swerve in their chairs. He put gum in their flyer, told them to hit his music. So there's clearly something developing there. And it's going to be interesting to see what that matriculates into. Is it going to be Swerve against Jack Perry? Okada's a Continental Champion. Wouldn't make sense for them to fight. The Bucks fighting him one-on-one wouldn't make sense. So I am curious to see how that develops. Also on Dynamite, we had Danielson against Singh. Bryan got thrown into the steel steps, and Sonjay was supposed to clear the announce table for some type of sequence. Instead, by moving 2 parts of it gently, the entire fucking thing just collapsed on its own. You cannot make that shit up. Singh was awful. He pulled off a turnbuckle pad that was still kind of covered. With the referee's back turned, the arguable best wrestler in the world, a babyface, decided he needed to low blow him. Singh no-sold some stuff, and then Danielson put him in a crossface before the rest of the still unnamed group. Do you remember the Jeff Jarrett crew were searching for a name like 4 months ago, and they were trying to become serious and start winning, and they just kind of dropped that entire thing? Well, they attacked for disqualification. Danielson then easily took down everyone with the Bazaiku knee, and Singh punched a guitar attempt from Bryan, and that didn't really matter. It was just a spot. As Danielson got beat down 4-on-1, the Bucks walked down with a small envelope of cash. Shivani screamed about the Elite taking over the entire promotion. I mean, they're literally EVPs and founders of it, but they picked the bones of Danielson, and my DVR recording stopped just due to the overrun. Luckily, AEW posted the entire overrun on Twitter. As the Bucks went to hit EVP trigger on Bryan, fans chanted CM Punk very audibly. He avoided it, Bryan did, and beat them down. Kazuchika Okada's coin dropped. Jack Perry attacked him from behind, so it's 4-on-1. As they went up the ramp, an SUV pulled into the parking lot. Darby got out with what I thought was a paintball gun, and then dapped up a mean-mugging Tony Khan, who was the driver, kind of like Sue. I literally laughed out loud. Turns out this was not a paintball gun, because what the hell do I know? It was a flamethrower that he just kept shooting into the air to ward off the heels once he got onto the stage. It was a super cool visual to end the show, but also like point it at them and kill them if you're going to bring it, right? As I talked about earlier, there's such a logic gap with the Bucks taking over the show, but Tony booking it and Darby being banned from the arena, but them easily driving in and him just walking onto the stage with a weapon and no one from security stopping him. If you are really into this storyline and you want to see Team AEW beat up the Elite, then this was a great go-home moment for it. If you're mixed about it like me, then it was just a ball of whatever. I did like that Tony came back before the pay-per-view, but now I wonder what can logically happen in this storyline regardless of the pay-per-view result. And now that he's back, is he in the chair for Double or Nothing? Does that mean the Bucks are not? Does that mean that for Anarchy in the Arena, Tony can make it 8-on-4? Why couldn't he if he's back in control and stack the odds against them? Again, these are all plot holes in this storyline. In terms of who's going to win, I've always thought it was going to be the Elite. With Tony back, theoretically, he should be able to do whatever he wants to help the babyface team. Assuming that's not going to happen, again, logic, then I got the Elite winning this. Sure, you could have either of the Bucks take a fall. You could have either FTR guy take a fall. You could have Darby take a fall. All that's legit. But if the story is going to continue, then the Elite need to have some power. They need to be able to puff their chests out and demand things. And if in their first major match in this storyline they lose, then they lose all of that momentum, whatever little momentum they have. So I have the Elite going over in Anarchy in the Arena. Now, I did forget to mention, I got into this match breakdown without talking about the fact that AEW is building this as a triple main event. And I find this interesting because WWE got heavily and correctly criticized for building some show, I forget which one it was, as a triple main event previously. It was ridiculous and doesn't really make sense. There's one main event. If you want to say a double main event, okay. But a triple main event is just a joke. Now, AEW is doing this because sales for their last pay-per-view were utter shit. And they're trying to figure out what triggers they can pull, what levers they can pull, to get buys up and get interest up again. This is also, though, an example, I mentioned WWE did it previously, of AEW trying to use a tactic that WWE tried and that it failed when they tried. Remember the countdown clock that they've had on TV the last couple of weeks? WWE tried doing that for multiple weeks. I think with Cody Rhodes will be on the show at 9 p.m. sharp. They would do a countdown clock. And then they got away from it because it was stupid and it didn't work. And this is now the second thing that AEW is trying that WWE already attempted but gave up on. So I'm just so curious, is that a Mansory thing? Is that who is making these decisions? Another interesting thing, just to note before we get into the final 2/3 of the triple main event, is unlike last week's show where I noted that where the best wrestle was probably said anywhere between 6 to 8 times across television, I don't recall hearing it once. Now, maybe it was said once or twice, but because I overlapped a commercial by a couple seconds or whatever the case, I missed it. But I don't recall hearing it. That was a huge positive for AEW. You don't need to hammer us in the head with that phrase, which is already annoying as it is. That said, let's get to the final 2/3 of the triple main event. The TBS Championship on the line, Willow Nightingale against Mercedes Moné. On Dynamite, there was a video package and really no additional go-home build for this match. And my comment here was that there does not need to be any additional go-home build because nothing could really top the contract signing from last week. And then my understanding, and I did not read spoilers, I never do, is that something happened with Mercedes and or Willow on the taping for Collision Rampage, whatever the case, and that's going to be the go-home. What I don't like is the fact that they're doing a go-home, but they didn't do it on their biggest show when Mercedes is supposed to be such a huge deal, and they're promoting it as a triple main event. But I want to see what happened, and we'll discuss it more on our AEW Double or Nothing instant analysis Sunday when the show goes off the air. Now, I would legitimately love it if Willow retained the title. AEW has done a good job of getting me to actually root for her, though it's easy because Mercedes has disappointed massively since arriving. But I don't know how you bring Mercedes in, have her appear on TV for multiple months without wrestling, give her her first match for a title, and then don't put her over. So my prediction is going to be Mercedes winning. What interests me is how it's going to happen. She could beat Willow clean. I kind of think that would be a mistake. I'm slightly curious about what's been going on with Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway. I'm thinking they play into the finish somehow, maybe Stat more so than Stoke. For example, Mercedes is cheating, the referee's knocked down, Stat comes down, tries to help Willow, ends up hurting her or costing her instead. Mercedes gets the win, they have a spat. Or Stat is jealous that Willow's in the spotlight, purposefully costs her the title. Mercedes gets the win. Willow has an excuse. I'm not against Willow losing clean because it is Mercedes and it's totally understandable, but she is so over and she's doing such a great job right now. It feels like something should happen in the match where she gets an excuse loss or a reason eventually to go back after the title. So I'm picking Mercedes, but I hope they do this with a light touch that maintains Willow even if she's not champion anymore. And lastly, let's get to the main event of the triple main event, the AEW Championship, Swerve Strickland defending against Christian Cage. On Dynamite, Swerve fought Wayne in a non-title match. Swerve kicked the shit out of Wayne and even beat him with his belt at one point. Swerve countered House Call into a backbreaker and then into a power slam. Then he said, "I'm sorry," and hit a House Call on Wayne and got the win. Just like the Takeshita match, absolutely and appropriately dominant, though this did go longer than that one did, obviously. But this is how big-time talent need to be presented. You have them beat guys who should not be competitive with them in a somewhat dominant fashion. Luchasaurus attacked after the bell until Swerve low-blowed him. Then Swerve chased Christian all the way into the parking lot, hitting a drive-by house call on Luchasaurus as he was running around the ring, which was kind of funny. Just as it looked like Christian was going to drive off, Prince Nana pulled up in his way, allowing Swerve to catch up and beat him. Swerve DDT'd Christian atop a Wagoneer, and Nana somehow had a regulation steel chair in the parking lot, with Cage escaping right before he could eat a concerto. The pop of the entire night for me, you know what? The pop of 5 hours of AEW television this week for me was Nana pulling up in that car. Looked like he was drinking coffee, casually doing it. I laughed so loud. It was so funny, perfectly executed. The rest of it was kind of paint by numbers, not the strongest go home for your main event. At the same time, they've done so much recently. They had Swerve bleeding last week, taking the picture frame shot to the head. Like, what else really were you going to do? Swerve and Christian, it's been built really well. I've said from the beginning, it's not the most exciting first major feud for Swerve, but it does make complete sense in storyline. And again, even though Christian literally quit when he lost the TNT title, he did hold it long enough, and he did have 2 reigns with it, and he's also a legend, where you can justifiably say, okay, he's going after the new champion. So there should be a pretty clean win for Swerve over Christian. It shouldn't hurt Christian that much, obviously, losing to Swerve. What I would like to see coming out of AEW Double or Nothing, whether it happens on the show or whether the following week on Dynamite, is a real high-quality, interesting feud with Swerve and someone else that you can sink your teeth into. And I don't know what they're going to do. It could be Hangman Page returning. They may save Hangman Page and Swerve for All In. And then I actually think that may make a lot of sense, given it does not seem like Will Ospreay is going to be going after the world title. But I just want something a little bit meatier, a little bit more exciting than just putting someone like Christian in. Like, I wouldn't want Jericho now to go after Swerve or someone like that. It needs to be someone more interesting and more exciting. But again, Christian initially wasn't that exciting. they ended up doing a really good job with the build for this match. So I do have Swerve coming out of this retaining the title. And that wraps up the ultimate preview for AEW Double or Nothing, which brings us to our pre-show expectation grade. And of course, we give you this on this show, and then we'll give you our post-show grade on the AEW Double or Nothing Instant Analysis Sunday as soon as the show goes off the air. You as listeners will have an opportunity to contribute your pre- and post-show grades on Sunday by following us on Twitter at Getting Overcast and voting in the polls that we post, and we will discuss your grades on the Instant Analysis podcast as well. I'm actually going to give this a similar pre-show grade to what I gave WWE King and Queen of the Ring. I think this is going to be an exciting show from an in-ring standpoint. You have Copeland and Black. You have Strong and Ospreay. That's going to be a banger. Anarchy in the Arena. Even when a match like that isn't great, it's still at a minimum good, especially when you have the Bucks in there. And you guys know I'm not huge Bucks fans, but they work their asses off in matches like this. And you have Darby, who's going to do some crazy shit. And you have Jack, who's clearly willing to do crazy shit. And you have Danielson, who should not do any crazy shit, and yet he probably will. And then the uniqueness of Okada just being involved in this match is super interesting to me. Willow and Mercedes, I have no doubt, is going to be an absolute
banger.
And I think Storm and Deeb, from an in-ring wrestling standpoint, should be solid. And of course, Swerve and Christian as the main event. I'm not going to be surprised if we get blood and interference and convolution, but Swerve coming out on top, big babyface moment to end the show. That should work. And maybe they do have a surprise in store. Maybe it's Hangman returning. Maybe something else happens that kind of ends the show on a really interesting note. It is the 5-year anniversary of AEW. That's something that Tony Khan has been promoting. So it would make sense for them to have some type of moment on this show, especially since, if memory serves, the first Double or Nothing was the debut of Jon Moxley. So maybe there's something happening in that regard. In terms of my grade, going back to that, just like with WWE King and Queen of the Ring, I feel like if I gave this a B, I would just be underselling it off the top. So I'm going to say a B+ pre-show expectation grade. I'll say an 87 out of 100. That gives AEW a huge gap to exceed expectations. And it's very possible they will, because there are individual strong matches on the card. The question is, how excited are we going to be for it in totality by the time it is over? I can't tell you that now. I can tell you that Sunday night, as soon as AEW Double or Nothing goes off the air, we will, of course, have our Instant Analysis podcast for you. So look, folks, that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, the second of 4 podcasts for you this week, coming from Getting Over through your ear holes, the performance-enhancing audio we deliver. We know that you love it. On the way out, first, let me remind you about the schedule. Saturday afternoon, we will have your WWE King and Queen of the Ring Instant Analysis as soon as that show goes off the air. I'll repeat it for the 4th time. Your AEW Double or Nothing Instant Analysis Sunday night as soon as that show goes off the air. Next Tuesday, we'll be back with your WWE episode. And next Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel, we'll talk AEW and NXT. Allow me now to hit you with a few reminders. First, that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
It's all about the 5.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all that good stuff. And it's also, again, where you can vote in those pre- and post-show polls. And please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do too, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover, sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to Raw, NXT, Dynamite, and SmackDown, along with exclusive news posts every Friday. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Thank you all for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. We will be back with you this weekend, but this is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.